Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to give you a tutorial on how to draw using alcohol markers and pencils. I'm going to show you how I apply this in a portrait. A few good things to know before we start are the paper to use. I recommend using a paper that is a little bit thick so that it can handle the moisture of the alcohol marker. For example, I'm using the Moleskine sketchbook and I think this has around 200 GSM thickness, so anything from 150 and up I would recommend. Another type of paper I really like to use is this one, Paint on Multi Techniques from Clairefontaine. And this is 250 GSM. One thing I don't recommend is using watercolor or gouache paper because this paper is designed to absorb a lot of the moisture and we don't want it to just suck our markers empty. Then onto the markers. I really like working with alcohol markers and I have a few different brands that I recommend. Here we have the Ohuhu markers and they are double-sided. This is what they look like. They have a brush tip, which is my favorite because you can be really precise with it. Besides that, Copic markers are an industry standard for drawing with alcohol markers. They are really high quality, but they are a little bit more expensive. And I know that Himi also has some alcohol markers that are pretty good. Oh yeah, I also have these by Graby. They look really good as well. So usually before I start, I like to have everything ready. Get the markers that I want to use, my sketchbook and the color sheets for the markers. I like to refer to these to make sure that I'm getting the marker that I want. Sometimes the color on the tip of the marker doesn't align exactly with the color it gives off on the paper. Starting off with some tips for blending, I always like to go from light to dark. If you want to blend a color from a light purple to a dark purple, make sure to use a medium tone to make the blending more easy. You also want to work really quickly because the marker dries on the paper really fast. So now I'm going to quickly move to the medium color. First, I'm going to blend this transition. And then I will grab my dark color and blend out from medium to dark. This is still quite a big transition from medium to dark, so you could always grab a fourth color to blend it even better. The same thing goes for blending from color to color. So if you want to blend from yellow to blue, make sure to use the color that is in between on the color wheel, so green. There you go. I used a paper that is quite thick, but it still bleeds through on the other side. Now we're going to apply these techniques into a portrait, and I always put something beneath my page to make sure that it doesn't bleed through all the way to the next page. The first thing I do is erase some of the pencil. Do this very lightly so you can still see where you have to color. You will not be able to erase it anymore after you go over it with marker. Then I like to start with the lightest color because if you go too dark, you cannot go back anymore. I use a flicking motion to make it easier to blend with the other shades. Once I'm done, I take a slightly darker shade and I blend them wherever they overlap, using a flicking motion again and working really quickly to make sure that I can blend it before the marker has dried on the paper. To fill up a larger area in one go, I move back and forth and overlap every stroke with the previous one so that there is an equal amount of marker everywhere, which gives a nice and even result in the end. For the cheeks, I like to use something with a bit more color, so more of a pink and rosy shade. I blend it into the colors that are already on the page. as this paper is not the most thick paper, going over the same spot over and over with marker results in some spots that cannot absorb the marker anymore. So now she has a bit of a patch on her cheek, but that will be fixed with pencil later. After I added a bit more dimension with a darker shade, I grabbed some blue for the eyeshadow, and this is of course not the same for every portrait that you're going to be doing. I made sure to blend the eyeshadow into the shadows of the eyes. The eyes always have a shadow under the eyebrow in the inner corner. I like to use cool tone colors for the shadows like blue and purple, but you can use any darker skin color that you want. Then with a dark brown color I fill in the hair, and again I use this flicking motion to make sure that the colors are blended really well together. Then with pencil I like to first define the details so that it looks a bit more sharp, and I always make sure that my pencils are sharpened really well so that I can be more precise. When it comes to the skin, I find pencils that match the colors that I used, and I blend out the marker even more. With the pencils I can also add a little bit more color and details in the skin. Something that I love about working with markers is that you can use a white pencil to go over it and it will just become white again. You can see me using that for some of the details like her earrings and for some highlights. Another thing I like to use for highlights is this white jelly pen. This one is from Sakura and I really like just how opaque the white is. The highlights are the last thing I do. So I hope that this tutorial was helpful, and if there are any other tutorials you want to see, just leave them in the comments. I've linked all these supplies I used in the description, and thank you so much for watching.